Are you ready to understand the difference between wild caught, aquacultured, farm raised fish? Is it ethical? Where are we importing from? Should I get wild caught fish? Why are there more wild caught fish from nanospecies than there are African cichlids? All this information, I'm not sure. Stay tuned. What's going on YouTube? It's Jay Wilson, JWill07, Instagram, Twitter, Jay Wilson on Facebook, NorthfinUSA.com, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So what are we here to talk about? Well, you may have seen the title. It's wild caught versus aquacultured. And no, it's not a fight. It's an understanding, a better grasp on the topic itself. But I'm not going to be the one explaining it to you because, well, I don't have the depth of knowledge this person does. So I'm going to introduce them. They're a mother of three, a wife. They've been keeping fish all their life, from nanospecies, micro nanospecies, to monster fish. They have 100+ tanks at any given time working. She's got an amazing YouTube channel. She's a speaker and a co-author of 101 best freshwater nanospecies. This person really doesn't need an introduction, but without further ado, Rachel O'Leary, Miss Jinxed herself, is about to explain wild caught versus aquacultured. So Rachel, what do you think?
Hey guys, and welcome to the Fish Room. Thanks for that question, Jay. I think it's a really good one and a really misunderstood one. I think the vast majority of people think of wild collection as, people running willy-nilly through the wild, destroying habitats and grabbing as many fish as they can in order to make tons of money. When the reality is there's some very ethical ways for fish to be collected. I think we should start by talking about the differences between aquaculture and wild collection. Aquaculture is basically when humans intervene in a way to breed fish deliberately, be it in glass boxes or in vats or ponds or whatever. And it's a really huge industry. Something like 90% of the fish available in our hobby are actually already being aquacultured. I got that information from a paper that's a little out of date, but I think it's probably still pretty close. I mean, the reality is that farmers in both here in the US and Florida, as well as places like Singapore, are breeding vast numbers of the fish that we keep. And this is fantastic. It means that they're not being collected, so their wild populations aren't being threatened. It means that we're able to develop domestic color strains, albinism or long fins or various other designer colors that otherwise just you wouldn't really see or that wouldn't survive in the wild. And a lot of people really like that. It also gives us the ability to do studies on fish, to research fish, and to understand the speciation a lot better. Now, one of the things that I think people don't think about that is sort of on the opposite side is that if we're not wild collecting these species, often any interest in their habitat is pretty much overlooked. We're not paying attention to the degradation of their habitat. Conservation efforts can't be put in place. No one is necessarily consistently monitoring the numbers of fishes that are still in those wild habitats. So it can have a really beneficial impact as well as allowing us to get in genetic diversity for a lot of the fish that we're working with. Cichlids in particular are pretty, well, I don't want to say easy to breed in captivity, but are breedable in captivity. So, they're ones that are absolutely perfect for farming. Unfortunately for me, a lot of the species that I work with are not very viable for aquaculture purposes. And that's for a few reasons. They're difficult to sex, they're difficult to breed, the fry are extremely tiny, and they really don't make enough money for the farmers to invest in the equipment, the space, and the human effort to rear little tiny fish that are relatively inexpensive. And because of that, a lot of what I work with is still currently wild collected. Now that doesn't mean a hobbyist can't breed it. It means that it doesn't make sense for it to be farmed in huge numbers. And I think it's also important to remember that all of the places that fish are collected for the most part have limits. You're limited on how many of each species you can take. You're limited on how many species you can take, and you're often limited on what species you can take. And this really helps to preserve a lot of the things that we're worried about. Ornamental fish export is a massive part of developing countries' industry. You know, there are many places that are depressed and developing whose main means of support is our hobby. It is the export of our fish. And this means that they can support their families. This means they don't have to move away from home in order to find a way to support their families. And it also means they aren't looking for jobs in industries that are a lot more destructive to the environment, things like mining. It also gives us the opportunity to go into the areas where the fish that we love are and really see what's happening there. It lets us, you know, get counts of the fish. It lets us see if invasives are there. It lets us see how they breed, how they behave, take water measurements, take flow measurements, and really understand more about the husbandry of our fishes. The vast majority of exports from a lot of the developing countries where we get our fish is our fish. So I think that that is a pretty big impact. Now, there are lots of unethical collectors and lots of unethical sellers. And in my mind, the biggest problem is that. And there are a few things that you can do. For instance, if you're interested in South American fish, you can make sure that the fish come from Project Piaba, which is an excellent resource, and they give a lot of money back to conservation, preservation, and research for our fish. Another thing that you can do is look on ofish.org, which is the Ornamental Fish International site, and that lists a huge database of importers, exporters, retailers, shippers, collectors that all are really focused on following industry standards for the ethical collection and preservation of our species. I think it would be really difficult for hobbyists to continue our hobby and grow our hobby and really watch it grow as it has been if we limit ourselves to only keeping captive bred specimens. There's many species that haven't even been discovered yet, but more importantly, there's a lot of species that are on the CARES list, the list of fish that are either critically threatened, endangered, or near extinction in the wild that we as hobbyists can work with to preserve. A great example of that is the Selosi. They've been captively bred and reintroduced back into the wild. It's fantastic, but there's lots of species that are really threatened that if capable hobbyists can't get, they will disappear entirely. And I think it's important that you be aware of not only our power as hobbyists, but also what we can do to support the governing bodies that are trying to protect our hobby. And one thing that you can do is go to the Aquatic Defense Fund. Now, the Aquatic Defense Fund raises money in order to support the lawyers that are working to protect our hobby. Now, you can find more information on that at PJAC, and that's where you'll see that there's a whole bunch of laws that are trying to come into effect in our country that would basically create a whitelist, a list of species that we're allowed to have. And it's really important that we speak up to our local representatives so that they realize this is something that we care about. And you can find information on how to do that on either PJAC or Aquatic Defense Fund. And I would really encourage you, if you have or are involved in a formal organization like an aquarium club, and they do donations, that you encourage them to support the Aquatic Defense Fund too. But back to the question at hand. So I don't think that the answer is as simple as saying wild collection's better or aquacultured species are better. I think that there's a very big picture here, and that aquaculture is absolutely imperative for us to support, maintain, and appreciate, but that there is also a very real reason to continue the export of wild critters. We need the genetic diversity, we need to get new species, and for people like me, it's the only way to get the things that we love. With awareness of the Ethical Collection Initiative and our role as hobbyists in choosing where we buy our fish, I think we have a lot more power than you think.
Rachel, that was amazing. Thank you so much. That I couldn't have said it, well, I couldn't have said it, period. So we really appreciate you taking the time to pass on your knowledge. Folks, this video you need to save. Keep it. Make sure that you're doing the right research when you are trying to get wild collected fish. I promise you, it'll save you a lot of heartache and a lot of money. Check out the description below. There's going to be a ton of links for you to check out the Aqua Defense Fund, PJAC, and all of the things that Rachel talked about inside this video. Thank you for being a part of one of the greatest communities on the face of this planet. Become a member of your local association. Thank you for liking. Thank you for disliking, subscribing, unsubscribing, all of it. You seriously make this whole thing that much more awesome. You know what's next. Holla!